Around this time 2 decades ago, I was likely rocking back and forth like a crazed addict, a fiend anticipating his next new hit. But my drug of choice was television, a fresh, mold-breaking show called 24. 24 was unlike anything I had ever seen, using its 24-episode season to its advantage. Each episode was an hour in the life of Jack Bauer, an agent for the Counter-Terrorist Unit of Los Angeles, better known as CTU. The show opened with a digital clock slowly pulsating into view, before we hear the voiceover of Jack Bauer himself, played by Kiefer Sutherland.
The following takes place between midnight and 1 a.m. on the day of the California presidential primary.
24 debuted in November of 2001, 2 years before I got a TiVo. So my inability to be able to skip commercials really helped sell the real-time illusion. This led to a visceral and more immersive experience with the show. Between a relentless ticking clock opening and closing each ad break,
Do you want to hit the roof? Yeah, sure.
and characters communicating by phone via simultaneous split screens, 24 used the entire television model to creative perfection. Its concept felt more urgent and alive than anything else I'd seen on TV. It's just too bad that other people weren't watching. The ratings for 24 in its first season were fairly mediocre, although critics did love it, and the show received a monumental level of press. You certainly can't blame the Fox network, which aired 24, either. They promoted 24 like the network's life depended on it. Maybe 24 was a bit ahead of its time. Or perhaps it was bad timing overall, given that real terrorism hit America 2 months prior to the show's debut in 2001. Whatever it was, the series premiere of 24 certainly wasn't the problem, because after rewatching the first episode for the first time in a very long time, it's safe to say that 24 debuted one of the best pilots of television I've ever seen. So let's dive in.
If Palmer gets hit, the first African American with a real shot at the White House, it'll tear this country apart.
As 24 evolved, it would go on to become a bit of a chaotic show. And that's a bit by design, because the show does deal with terrorism. But its flashy, high-stakes nature sometimes led to a zero-sum game. Assassinations, double crosses, poison gas, nuclear bombs. When spectacle drives the bus, story can sometimes take a back seat. The pilot episode of 24, however, doesn't suffer from this misfortune. In the pilot episode, Jack Bauer is trying to reconcile with his wife Terry, played by Leslie Hope. He wants to be a good father, but is struggling a bit to parent his rebellious teenager.
Let me guess. Just now she was all sweetness and light, right? And then she said something nasty about me?
Yeah, and I just busted her on it.
And as luck would have it, that teenager,
Ken,
played by Alicia Cuthbert, has just snuck out of the house after midnight on a school night. She's hanging out with her friend and 2 guys she's never met before.
They're not just, a bunch of high school idiots. And your point is, they're men, not boys.
It's a bad choice, of course.
She's grounded for 2 months, no exceptions.
And once Jack receives an emergency phone call demanding he come into CTU, he and Terry play phone tag the whole hour trying to sort out the mess. Then there's Senator David Palmer. A charismatic and inspiring presidential candidate, Palmer and his staff are up late working on a speech. And it's an important speech, as the pilot of 24 takes place on the day of the California presidential primary. Spirits are high in the Palmer campaign, as victory appears to be on the horizon. David seems to have a good relationship with his wife Sherry, played by Penny Johnson-Gerald. But their jovial energy turns gloomy when a reporter calls and speaks with Palmer directly.
You air that allegation or anything remotely like it, this conversation's over, Maureen.
In fact, It's serious enough to cause David to suddenly give his wife the cold shoulder.
Since when don't we talk about things?
There's not only problems on the ground, but in the sky as well. On a crowded flight, we see a brown-skinned man ask a flight attendant when they'll soon be landing. He's apparently on his way to meet David Palmer, or so he says.
Excuse me. So, you know David Palmer?
He'll be tasked with snapping photos of Palmer for a magazine.
I'm going to be taking a few pictures of him.
Well, unless he's a terrorist, of course. Meanwhile, Jack arrives at CTU, a headquarters rich in green hues and deep shadows. But relationships and high-pressure choices rest in various shades of gray.
If it leaks out that we're screening Senator Palmer, people might think it's because he's black.
Well, it is because he's black. It makes him the most likely target.
We meet Nina Myers, played by Sarah Clark, a colleague who's Jack's right-hand woman. She appears to support Jack through thick and thin.
You're lying.
Yes, I am. But you're still gonna have to trust me.
This support is born from a previous romantic relationship, an office tryst that occurred during Jack's separation from his wife. The show smartly doesn't focus too much on this, allowing the audience to infer details through bits of dialogue and body language. It's clear that Nina's loyalty to Jack bothers Tony Almeida, played by Carlos Bernard, another colleague Jack must rely on despite some lingering animosity.
It's interesting, because I've been trying to pick up a thread of my own.
But what?
Whether you're still sleeping with Jack?
It doesn't help that Jack has a reputation in the office, and it's not a positive one. When Administrative Director of CTU, Richard Walsh, informs Jack that Senator Palmer's life may be at risk, and that someone in CTU could be a dirty agent involved in the plot, Jack reveals why he's a bad choice to vet his colleagues.
I built a case against 3 of our own agents and busted them for taking bribes.
This clearly sent shockwaves throughout the department. Nina argues for Jack's honor, but Tony isn't buying it.
What do you see in him? He turned in his own people, for Christ's sake.
They were dirty.
Oh, he's Mr. Clean, huh?
It's an interesting argument, especially based on what we see occur later in the pilot. We learn that Jack needs key intel from District Director George Mason, played by Xander Berkeley. But Jack believes Mason is hiding something. He just can't prove it.
What are you saying?
He's screwing with us. Give me that binder.
Knowing that time is of the essence, and Mason won't budge.
Yeah, I'm talking to my boss, Jack. Right. You stupid chump.
Jack tranquilizes Mason, giving Jack and Nina limited time to uncover the truth. Ultimately, Jack ends up being right. Mason was indeed hiding information. Jack is then able to blackmail Mason, after he wakes up of course, into reluctantly doing the right thing.
Thanks for your help, George.
You'll live to regret this, Bauer. I promise you that.
But do the ends justify the means? I'm sure Jack believes he didn't compromise his integrity, but he doesn't approach his job lawfully either. Is doing the wrong thing for selfish reasons morally wrong, but doing the wrong thing for selfless reasons morally right? And what would you do if you knew time wasn't on your side and a presidential candidate might soon be murdered? Perhaps we would all cross the line. Perhaps we wouldn't, but that's what makes the pilot episode of 24 so intriguing. By the time we reach the end of this riveting hour, the terrorist on the plane is revealed. It's not the brown man after all, it's the pretty white woman. And she's blown up an entire 737. With his daughter's whereabouts unknown, a terrorist attack already committed, and a presidential candidate's life on the line, 24 stacks the deck against Jack Bauer. Will he be able to hold on to his integrity by the end of the day? Or will Jack follow the path of the disgraced colleagues he busted, men that made choices that compromised their values and the law? Only time will tell. Unfortunately for Jack, time is also running out. Hey, you made it all the way to the end. I respect that. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button down below. And if you're brand new here, I'd love it if you could subscribe. This is my second video on this channel. So if you love 24, if you love movies, if you love television shows, and if you love video essays like this, I'd love to have you on board. And let me know if you would love to see me do a video essay on the entire first season of 24. I have some ideas of how I'd want to approach it. Probably would break it down into 2 videos since it's a lot of episodes. Let me know what your thoughts are on 24 as a show, what you thought about the pilot in particular. How did you get into 24? Were you watching it back in 2001 when it debuted? Did you come aboard later on once the show got very popular? Or did you maybe start watching the show after it finished its original run on television? Once again, thank you very much for watching, and hopefully I will see you in the next video.